Today's Magic video is going to be discussing Alliances from 1996, that amazing Magic set that really got players focused after the horrible debut of Homelands about 8 months earlier. So stay tuned in today's video because we're talking about the reserve list cards within this set, the sealed product, and an overall discussion of reserve list finance. Let's take a look, stick around, we have a lot to cover today. Hi everyone and welcome back. MTG Moxman here, and thanks again for hanging out with me on my channel today. We're going to start out by discussing Alliances. As a sealed product, this product at one point was like $80 a box here in Canada way back in 96. I remember splitting boxes with my friends. As the years have gone by and boxes started to disappear, and of course, the evolution and creation really of MTG Finance, these boxes started to be sealed and held. And all the way up until I guess around 2020, boxes tipped the scales at about $10,000 US per box. But where are these boxes now? Where are the booster packs? What's happening on the reserve list side of these cards, and where is it likely to go from here? That's what we are here to discuss. Now, first off, let's make things pretty simple. If you went looking on eBay right now, and these would be eBay Canada, so I could find a sealed box from a reputable buyer for anywhere between $2,200 all the way through to $2,600 Canadian. But if you recall, I literally just told you these boxes used to be $10,000, and they did sell at that point. Anywhere between $7,000 and $10,400, these boxes were going for a lot of money. So what happened? Where did everything go? What's going on in the market now? Well, here's the interesting thing. The fact that players can sell these boxes this cheap means, let's face it, they already had the boxes. They're not losing anything. They've had them for a long time. They probably bought them around the $200 or $300 level. So don't be spooked by a higher or lower price about the collectability. You as a player, you as a speculator, investor, wherever you fall in the market of this product, you have to want to get the product. You have to want to have an old sealed box. You can see them in my background. I got most of mine cheap too, but that doesn't mean that I would not dive in and speculate on an older box that had value to me as a player. Because the funny thing is, we know most of the cards, especially for newer boxes, as they get reprinted, they lose value. The sealed product just doesn't hold up the way a reserve list box does. Even things like Homelands, which did not have a great time back in the day. We played with it, we used it because there was nothing else, but it wasn't a well thought of set. Really, it and Homelands really kind of put a damper on things, but at the moment of playing with those sets, it was epic. And when Alliances came out, no, I didn't think much of Force of Will, but I sure like cards like Helm of Obedience, Lake of the Dead, Keljoran Outpost, Soldevi Excavations, the card of this channel. These cards got me going. The values that I could use these cards and integrate them into my decks was something special. Now, all of these cards are on the reserve list. All of these cards are no longer available. So what does that mean on the reserve list side of things? What does this mean for the boxes that are sitting there to be bought by players? Well, those boxes have been there for months. They're not moving. You see, FOMO and speculation gets the blood pumping, makes people do stupid things, and they dive in and buy these things. So are they cheap enough? No, they're not. Because if they were cheap enough, people would be buying them. Always remember that in a market space like this. It doesn't mean they don't have value. It means the bottom of this value to actually make players buy them with physical cash has not hit the right level. And that means they're going to continue to sit there until somebody caves in and knocks off another 50 bucks, knocks off another 100 bucks. But that means they're going to sit there a long time, because I explained to you guys about a minute and a half ago. These people who own those boxes have had them for a very long time. I follow and track these sales all the time. In some cases, they've been sitting there for years, waiting for people to buy. And as the market collapsed and less cash was available, they went nowhere. But the interesting thing, especially about Alliances, this set was designed differently. Okay, let me just show you this. Now, back in the day, Wizards of the Coast was still trying new things out. They had Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, they had Revised. Those things had 36 packs, 15 cards per pack. Then they went and they did, of course, Fallen Empires and Homelands, 8 cards per pack, which was only like 480 cards per box. Then they switched things up and they gave us the amazingness that is Alliances. That was a 45 pack booster box times the 12 cards, and we had still a regular size booster box in terms of how many cards there were, but you got more packs, which means overall you could make more money if you charge the same price. It was an early form of shrinkflation because these 12 card booster packs, it was 144 card set size, 55 commons, 43 uncommons, and 46 rares. Now, with that type of box breakdown, there was the potential to make more money. Those boxes back then at around $80 Canadian, I believe the packs back then were $3 per pack, which is the same as I was paying for revised packs. So overall, they were making more money per box, or at least the stores were, distributor, somebody was making more money. And it was a very popular set. It went over very well. Many of these cards found their way into our vintage decks back then because that's all we played with was kind of kitchen table Magic. Tournaments were still kind of new and upcoming. They weren't the main thing in my town, but a lot of these cards were very powerful. At the time, they were considered just nuclear. When you looked at a Bolduvian Horde, that thing was a forecasting cost 5/5 beastie monster. It could match the Jazam de Jin because they both cost 4. They both had one little side effect. The Horde, of course, you had to discard a card, but it was supposed to be the next big guy. But it didn't really work out that way. Sure, in 1996, it did very well. But in the intervening years, that card is basically a mediocre vanilla card that nobody would play with because the power level of game has gone past that. And that's where you have to start looking at reserve list cards inside this set. Because if you look at the individual cards and see which ones are being played, this is where it gets interesting. Because they're on the reserve list, most people would basically tell you if it's not in a Commander deck, it's worthless. But Commander's not the only format, and that's what's interesting. I've noticed more people breaking away from Commander and still enjoying Commander as a whole, of course, but also playing just 60 card decks for fun, kitchen table Magic, and kicking back. Because of the prices that have fallen so low in the last 18 months, for a lot of these reserve list cards, they've been a real steal, and a lot of players have been able to capitalize on the low reserve list prices of many of these cards. The question a lot of players are asking, is it going to stay this way? Mox, man, are prices going to stay this low? Can we get these cards this cheap forever? How do I know? Honestly. All I have is the data to tell you what they sold at, where they've been before, the highs, the lows, and where the market is right now. We know reserve list sales are up. Somebody's buying these cards. It doesn't matter who. Somebody's buying them. Things are going up in price. It's very slow. It's not like it's a big jump up and everyone notices and buyouts are happening. It's not going to be that way. It is a very slow upward drift from where we saw cards like the Lake of the Dead being $40. Look where it is now. Look at some of the price and you'll get a real understanding of where we're going. And you know what? Let me share those with you. Now, when we're taking a look at the cards that are on the reserve list, that are inside of alliances, it is actually a very large subset of this set. It's all rares. You got Ashnod Silex, Bolduvian Trading Post, the Chaos Harlequin Dystopia, which is kind of a brutal card, by the way. You got Fatal Lore, Floodwater Dam, Gargantuan Gorilla. You got Gusha's Scepter, the Heart of Yavimaya, the Helm of Obedience, still a brutal card to play with. You got Ivory Gargoyle, Kezia. You got the Keeper of Tressorhorn, the Kajoran Outpost, Korvokian Horror, Lake of the Dead, Lodestone Bauble, the Lord of Tressorhorn, which still sees Commander play. You've got Misfortune, Nature's Wrath, Omen of Fire, a brutal card, Phantasmal Sphere. The Feldegriff, Phyrexian Devourer, Phyrexian Portal, Ritual of the Machine, a Rogue Sky Captain, Royal Decree, Sheltered Valley, Soldevi Digger, Soldevi Excavations, Splintering Wind, Sustaining Spirit, which by the way, I still use my white deck, Sworn Defender, Thawing Glaciers, amazing. Then you also have Thought Lash, Tidal Control, Tornado, Varchild's War Riders, Wandering Wit Mage, and of course, Winter's Night. Now that you've seen all the cards from alliances that are on the reserve list, look at the values of some of these cards. Phyrexian Devourer is $14. Soldevi Excavation is $12. You can see Thawing Glaciers at $17, Thought Lash at $11. And there's a whole bunch of cards in the $5, $4, and $3 range. And this is just like the end of the list. If I go to the middle here, you can see we have a whole nother list of cards, and not all of them are reserve list, but there's still some value there. Okay, you start seeing it appear. You know, the Keeper of Tressorhorn's $4. You got Lodestone Bauble. You got the Feldegriff at $8. Remember that was a big buyout card? But the further down the list you go, the higher up we get. Forget the Ashnod Silex. Yes, it's a reserve list card, and it's speculated up, of course, when we saw the market going crazy, but that doesn't mean that these values are going to go insane. it means they're going to stay cheap for a long time. The most expensive cards in the set right now are Lake of the Dead, followed by Helm of Obedience, and then a whole bunch of the mana-based cards from this set holding the values of 15 bucks, okay? Is kind of that general rule. So the two expensive ones, Lake of the Dead, Helm of Obedience, because they see play. All the other cards, like Soldevi Excavations, Thawing Glaciers, Balduvian Trading Post, all those low-level lands that do something, all have some value, because if you look at the history of Magic cards and the cards that have been created afterwards, they are based on these reserve list cards. Castle Vantris, for example, of course, is based on that. Keljoran Outpost, you have Castle Ardendael. There's a whole list of cards that we've seen reprinted in various versions. But the good news for a Commander player is you can double up on those cards, right? I can have the Castle Ardendael and the Keljoran Outpost. Thawing Glaciers for all your mana drop lands, right, and cycling through. It may seem slow, but it's doing something every turn. It's helping get toward the victory. And that's interesting because a lot of players aren't focused on any of that right now. They're either really hyped on the new Magic sets or they're looking to those mid to high level cards in the backdrop, which leaves a lot of these low level but great utility cards that can be played in kitchen table Magic, old school stuff, not to mention Commander. Means they have a home in a lot of different places. And when you look at these cards to see which recent decks they've been created in, they're not going to show up in most cases. They're anomalies. They don't get mainstay play. But as Commander is a casual format, and because the artifacts from this set, like Helm of Obedience, can basically fit into any deck, a lot of these do find homes in weird ways. They show up in little connected decks for fun, little bit of spelunking and trying some crazy stuff. You don't know where the card can end up, but we do know this. There are some facts behind how the prices get reflected. And you can't ignore that. The market of MTG finance never ignores it. When Riversong came along, we saw Soldevi Digger go through the roof, okay? Yes, it's come back down. It's a $4 card again, $3 for like a light played copy. You can find these things really cheap. But what's to say it won't go up again later? If Riversong finds some connective tissue at some point and becomes unbeatable. Becomes like the One Punch Man, just insane. Alright? That means you may see these cards get reflected later in extremely volatile markets where you don't expect the value to go up. So that leaves the question to anyone who's still watching the video at this point is, are you going to buy them? Have you bought some? Because the list is quite extensive for this set. And there are a lot of decent cards that can be utilized, especially if you're just trying to mess around with people. Depends on how you play your Commander games. How you play your old school and old table Magic and just kitchen table style, take 60 cards, build some crazy deck for fun. People tend to forget this is a game. It's a game for fun. And yes, the cards have great secondary value compared to buying Risk or Monopoly. Absolutely. Okay, it's not like buying a deck of cards for $1 at the Dollarama. It doesn't work that way. Actually, I guess they're $2 or $3 now, the way the pricing's going with inflation. But the point is, when we're looking at the overall system of old boxes, and you take Alliances as an example, the prices have been drained so far down they are starting to become attractive. And I don't mean the booster packs, because if you buy a booster pack, it's $70, $80 still. But that would be like $3,600 to $3,700 for a full box, because it's 45 packs. But of course, you can buy a sealed box for $2,600, which is $1,000 or more less. Interesting, right? That's Canadian pricing too. Which means if you're in the States right now, some of these boxes are a lot more attractive than you realize. That's why we had players who started buying Fallen Empires and Homelands again over buying a collector box of Commander Masters. It didn't make sense. Why am I going to pay $400 for 4 packs of Magic when I can buy 60 packs of an old set that's no longer in production? Even if it's just a showpiece to talk about, or something you're actually going to draft and play with and rip old school Magic up and just have some fun. This is where we find ourselves with the inflationary measures that are being pressed on players. They can look to older sets for the same game experience, but the nostalgia built in. Imagine being that player and finding a box of Torment for $400. You know, it used to be $1,000. Let's say it's $400, $500. But that's the cost of what, a couple of play booster boxes, except for its Torment. And if you look at some of the old sets that may have some really cool cards in there, like Cabal Coffers, or you find an older set like Odyssey, and you can find them for good prices, Future Sight, players can get those gaming experiences because the boxes have been devalued to the point where they may become attractive again. the reserve list singles are devalued to the point where they're starting to be bought again and bought in quantity. A lot of low-level cards are moving. You can buy 10 copies of something for $10, so somebody buys 10 copies. They're just adding it to an order on TCG Player, of course using my affiliate link found in the description of this video. You think I wouldn't put that shill in there? Every time somebody uses that little link found in my videos, that helps the channel. It helps us get free cards for the channel and give for prizes and stuff, so thanks to everyone who takes the time to do that. But I have been buying some of these cards, I admit it. I've been buying some. Some for the Patreon giveaways, some for my own personal collection like Soldevi Excavations. I can't help it at those price points. I don't care if they go through the moon, but if there's cards I've always wanted to build with, or get 4 of at least, because remember, 4 copies is always key if you're going to build with some craziness. And because we know this game shifts all the time, let me ask you this. Do you really believe Commander will stay on top forever? Because history has told us that no Magic format stays on top forever. It evolves and changes and becomes something else. In the need for speed and quickness versus the casual play, the cards Wizards of the Coast gives us to play with is far different than the ones you'll find in Alliances. When you look at something like Omen of Fire that's going to melt all their islands and make them pick up all their planes and sacrifice all the craziness they can do to you with one card, you don't see that really nowadays. You see selective tissue damage. You see Farewell, where you pick selections. A lot of craziness back in those days. And they can be had for the low price of $1 a card. $1. That's what people have to remember. Crazy old stuff. Very powerful. A lot of fun to play with. And it costs next to nothing to get some of these reserve list cards. I hope you guys learned something today. I hope you had fun down memory lane with me talking about one of the most amazing Magic sets I got to experience as a kid. Yes, Alpha, Beta was in terms of power level. You'd say those were way crazier. But the game was just starting out. The evolution of the cards we were offered, to me it really started to really show when we had sets like Alliances coming down the pipeline, when you had Mirage, when you took a look at Tempest, and playing those tournaments and Visions. They were crazy times in Magic, so much excitement not knowing what was going to happen next. It's a little too formulaic for me right now. You can see the formula coming down the pipeline. Those days, you had no idea sometimes because you didn't even know what was coming in a set until the day it released. Thanks again for hanging out with me on the channel. Are you buying any of these amazing Magic cards? Are you skipping the whole deal? Or are you just buying new stuff? Either way, I'd like to know. Thanks for hanging around. If you made it this far in the video, put a boomstick in the comment section. And don't forget, always bring a friend to Magic. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. We are back to give the praise, to bow down to the lords of the board, the champions of the channel, the patrons, the YouTube membership members who make these videos happen every single day. Yeah, I've got the love of the Magic game, but without that support, we wouldn't be making videos the way we are today. So thanks again to everyone who supports this channel. I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow for another video. Have a great one. Welcome back to the Ramble Jamble. You've made it to the end. You are that type of person. You are dogged. You are a champion of champions to make it this far. This is a long video today. I had a lot to say. I was having fun. And you know what? That's the best part. Looking at old sets like this and seeing where the prices have gone to and make them that much more affordable is epic. Now, not many people are going to watch this video. It's not going to be the belle of the ball when it comes to YouTube. It won't get enough thumbs up. It won't get enough algorithm. That doesn't matter. When you put this information out there, you let people make their own decisions. They can take a look at these cards and they can see which ones will have value. They can see which ones are going to be better. Do I think the Lord of Tressorhorn is a great card? Yeah, I do. With all the availability nowadays of tokens, so easy to use. So easy. When I look at Thawing Glaciers, I can't believe it's not a $100 card. Lake of the Dead, not at $500? What are we talking about? Look at what some of these cards can do. And you sit there and go, it's everyone else's loss. Because eventually, the markets catch up. The further we get away from that reserve list, the more solidified it is. It becomes enshrined. And that just means the values eventually go up. Because if the game continues to expand and grow, then what ends up happening is you only have so many cards out there. You only have so much cardboard printed that says Lake of the Dead. People can talk about proxying all they want. They can say, hey man, I'm going to proxy. But you may get to tournaments where you can't proxy. You may get to game stores that say, no, we don't accept proxying here. Sorry. It does happen. It's the way it is, because you have players who say, hey, I don't want proxies here. I paid good money, and I want to play with players who feel the same way. Everyone's different. I personally don't care about proxies, But I know the shortage of cards before can only get worse if it hits another market movement where people get all the FOMO and crazy. And then you hear people crying saying the prices are too expensive. When really, they've been affordable for a couple of years. You just didn't buy them. There's no pleasing some people. So wherever the market falls right now, I'm just putting the information out there to say these prices are really low. And I like it. I mean, a Helm of Obedience lightly played, it's $40, man. Super cheap. Compared to what that thing can do for you and the ways you can bring it back, insane. Guys, great time today. Thanks for hanging out and being here on the channel. It's amazing to talk to you guys every day. I'm just lucky enough to be able to do it. All right? Have a great one. We'll see you guys later. Alliances, man. That's a great set.